like men in the country, do you think they're more likely to drink like cheaper, like less flavor beers or stouter, like heavier beers?
I think country folk are lighter. They're quantity over quality, typically.
Yeah.
Like around here, I think that's,
yeah.
I mean, in the greater Adams County area, I think it's, Busch Light, and that's fine. But
Right.
And Natty Light, because it's, I also think that people tend to drink around here like all day. Not every day, all day, but like it's not uncommon, I think, for people, if they're, all on a Saturday, for start at noon and go till 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Whereas like in a big city, I'm sure they do that there too, but
Yeah, it's okay, people in the big city, they definitely start drinking early.
Yeah.
Because it's 5 o'clock somewhere, they say.
Right.
But yeah, there is something weird about the rural areas where they start drinking all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all day.
It is.
But I think so if you live in the city and you're in town for a Bears game or, whatever, you're going to start tailgating at like 10.
Yeah.
And then you're drinking and then, whatever, you keep drinking until 3 or 4. Then
right.
Then you pass out at
like
5.
I think, the most beer consumed state is Wisconsin, I believe, or Iowa. I don't know. I think it changes every.
It's probably somewhere in there.
But it's a bunch of, it's rural areas, and they're out doing rural stuff, and
Drinking booze.
So, yep.
This is stuff that Quincy people do.
Yeah.
And everybody around the world.
Yes, it is it's a old tradition, starting the fermentation of the grape process.
My guest today is the illustrious Aiden McDonnell.
Frank,
and
nice
welcome to Frankie Say.
Thank you.
And I tell all of my guests, I'm so excited to have you. And every time I say it, I mean it, because it's somebody that I want to have on the Frankie Say program.
I'd hope so.
Yeah, but you specifically, I tried getting you on here a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
A few months ago. It didn't quite pan out because of scheduling.
It was actually kind of a mess because of my schedule at the time. So finally made it work, and I wasn't proactive in reaching out to get it rescheduled because
that's my job.
Yeah. So
that's
you
my
did.
Job.
And I'm here.
What are you supposed to do? Like call me every 5 minutes?
When am I
going on?
I didn't want you to know I was fangirling over the podcast.
Jeez, but if you were, that'd be kind of nice. Yeah, it's like you and my wife and 3 other. No, that's not true. No, the viewership for Frankie Say, I think, is
on the up.
Well, let's put it this way. Not to disparage, so my very good friends like Ashley and Brittany and Bob and all those other the employees of Muddy River, they do pods and they do a lot of video, audio stuff, and then you've got there's so many aspects.
Yeah, you guys are all over.
I mean, I can't beat Shuckman's sports stuff.
Shuck on a truck is a big deal.
Nothing I ever do is ever going to surpass either Bob or David will have. They'll write some kind of killer article that's attracting all of this stuff. I'll never beat that. I'm not going to beat Shuckman.
Yeah.
Am I trying to beat these guys? I mean, yeah, sure.
Well, it's like maybe one day you'll have Frankie's greatest top 10 or whatever, and you can go through the viewership on YouTube and see who is your most viewed guest. So
yeah, and Roberto Stellino will probably never get beaten because that guy just killed it when he announced that he was leaving Quincy forever and heading towards Hurricane Milton.
Yes,
over there in Naples, Florida.
I wonder if he's doing all right down there.
Oh, he's fine. Nothing can touch Roberto. He's probably gonna listen to this. He's gonna be like, "No, Frank, we almost died in this thing. You're downplaying the hurricane. I got squashed like bugs."
Fine, yeah.
But anyway, that's not a very good Roberto impersonation.
I knew.
But anyway, so a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, they like to know exactly what the person does for a living. So I'm gonna let you take it from there.
Awesome. Well, for a living, I'm a financial advisor. So Encompass Life and Wealth Strategies here in town. We're on 12th and Hampshire, and it's basically 5 1099, so solopreneur financial advisors, and we share office space to an LLC, Encompass, and share costs, keep our costs down, and share admin, and then we'll collaborate if we need to. And
do you do individual investments for people, like individual people or businesses? I actually don't. So you said Encompass.
Yeah, Encompass Life and Wealth Strategy. Okay. So all encompassing kind of, play on words. Greg Whitland was the founder of it. So he was a financial advisor here in town. And anyway, he founded Encompass, and then other advisors came there to join. It kind of called an ensemble practice in the in the our world, if you will, the advisor world. So yeah.
So maybe you already answered this, but I'm daydreaming about this. There's 2 or 3 things I really want to ask you, but is it can individuals walk into your office and get like wealth coaching?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Most of the business is individuals, but like, we set up retirement plans for businesses too, or I have, and other advisors have also. And some advisors have a little niche that they want to focus on, and they can do that. One advisor's a CPA, got a couple of CFPs in the office. So we all there has to be some cohesion. So we're governed, if you will, by a broker dealer. It's another industry term, kind of your allows you to what you can buy and sell, and they regulate you and things like that. And that's Cambridge Investment Research out of Fairfield, Iowa.
So I've got a story for you that I'm going to kind of drop on you that I told you in the green room. And Aspen Gengebacher can't wait.
She's all curious.
She's probably listening in the other room. But before I go into that question, just as like a kind of a preview to some of the things that we're going to be talking about, I'm going to ask you some questions about stocks. Okay. And I know that you told me in the green room that, there's compliance issues that you have. There's some integrity issues for your job to where if I ask a question and you're like, oh, Frank, listen, man, I'm so tied down.
Tiptoe around this
I'm
one.
Tiptoe. Yeah. So tiptoe.
Yeah.
And like I told you in the green room, like just absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely just answer however you want. And then we could talk about markets at some point in time. Sure. And I'd like to kind of touch on what an average person. So I have had people on the pod before. One other person, Jeff Kennedy, actually.
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah.
And that was that was really interesting for me. And I love talking to people about wealth creation because there's from people from all walks of life. So the quote unquote rich, like self-made people that built their empire, and they are kind of either novice to expert gurus in investing, the world of investing, or wealth creation, or how to accumulate wealth, and how to take financial net worths and make them go this way,
right?
Up, or
45 degree. Everyone
down,
wants that 45-degree angle up. Yeah.
And that's not really
always the reality. Most of the time, rarely the reality. Yeah.
Right. It's just up and down, and
right.
it's
volatile,
a mess.
And
we can talk about all of those things, but I do want to. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
So I consider you a contemporary of mine.
Okay. Likewise.
And so the way I'm going to say this, I'm going to start with before you were born. So you were born in 1994.
That's
wow, okay. And I remember.
Impressed. Yeah.
I remember when you were born.
Okay.
Okay. Because your dad, George.
Yeah. George McDonnell.
George McDonnell.
Yep.
And he sometimes I really like him a lot. And recently, I was in the narthex of St. Peter's.
Yeah.
And I think there was either there was a funeral, maybe. I don't know. I was at some kind of, or maybe it was mass. I'm not sure what it was.
He serves a lot.
So yeah, I see him, and I get really excited when I see your dad, because I mean he's a very influential person. I'm about to tell you like how he influenced my life in the positive.
Okay.
For all eternity.
Wow.
And I'm going to tell you this story.
Statement.
And maybe I told you this when you went to QND. I don't know.
I'll find out.
So this is what but briefly, I think it was last year. I'm talking to my kids, and my kids go, "Daddy, who is that?" And I go, "That's George McDonnell." And your dad kind of like looks at and kind of does this. Your dad's just cool, whatever. I go, Coach. So I still call him Coach.
Yeah.
Because that's my coach.
Yep.
I mean, I can call him Mr. He would probably prefer if I just called him George.
A lot of people call him George.
And stop being a sissy about it.
He was never, super formal on the titles with that.
Well, no, when I went to school and he was my freshman soccer coach,
right?
Everybody called him George.
Yep.
Never once. Never once in my life have I ever called him George.
You always called him Coach.
I have never called your father George. Never, ever.
That's news to me. Yeah.
I've only called him Coach.
Okay.
And he would call me Frankadoo.
Frankadoo.
Yeah.
Was that offensive or just a fun play on?
No, he was just like, I don't know.
Yeah, he's pretty casual.
We got along.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're at St. Peter's, and I go, "It's Coach," and then your dad looks at me and my 9-year-old and goes, "Player." So anyway, he's a funny guy.
Sounds like it.
So before you were born, it was 1991.
Okay.
And I was very upset with my soccer, how my soccer career was going. Mm-hmm. I was playing freshman soccer, and I started, and he had me on the wing. I didn't like playing wing. Sometimes he'd put me in the middle. He'd put me in like a midfielder, a center midfield.
Yeah.
But like I had like guys like Jamie Blazing in there.
Yeah.
There was like a better midfielder than I was. Better center mid for sure. He's probably bigger, stronger, faster at the time. And so I was like kind of lamenting to him. I'm like, he's like, let me tell you something Frank could do. And if your dad's watching, he's gonna be watching this.
Yeah, he'll watch.
So this is for him. So you took me down. You took me down to the religion room, wherever, and you sat me down. And you go, so here's a deal. I don't want to make a big deal about this, but you might want to consider wrestling. And I said, yeah. I mean, I keep on getting this. And so at the time, I weighed about 90 pounds. So
Soaking wet.
Valentino, my son,
Yeah.
is in second grade.
How much does he weigh?
72.
Holy crap.
So I'm a freshman at QND, and I weighed
It's 90 pounds.
90.
Yeah.
And I got down all the way down to 84 when I got sick during wrestling season.
Okay.
My freshman year. I got down to 84 pounds.
Holy crap.
My daughter, who's 9, weighs like 74 pounds.
So
it's like 10. I was only. Yeah.
You were in that range.
That's how small I was.
That's crazy.
So anyway, your dad sat me down and he gave me this talk. It wasn't very long. It was really short. And he told me about all of the things that were going to happen to me and all the things that could happen in the way of potentiality, and saying things like, so here's a reason why wrestling would be good for you. You're a smaller guy. Nothing wrong with that. You could bulk up, you can eat a lot of protein, you'd be real positive, and you can grow and grow and grow. You're going to grow into this big, strong guy, and you're going to get smarter, faster. You're going to do all the things, and then you'll play soccer, and then you'll play, hopefully you can play varsity maybe for Mark Longo, and you could do all of these things. And then someday, way after high school, when you're not even playing sports anymore, you can look back on that and be happy what you accomplished. And then I said, okay, sold.
He sold you. Oh,
and that's why I wrestled.
Coach Mansell, was he?
Well, I didn't know who Mansell was.
Okay.
And I never met Mansell.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, the reason why, so I kind of assistant coached you a little bit.
Yes, you did. You were my wrestling coach when I
was your wrestling coach,
yes. Mm-hmm.
assistant coach.
But you drove me to tournaments and yeah.
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 And I was there for you a little bit.
Yeah.
But my point is,
which I remember I was going to bring up.
But this is because of your dad.
That you wrestled.
The whole thing.
Right.
Why would I be your coach if I never wrestled? Your dad got me to wrestle. So I'm just saying, George, thank you very much. But anyway, I wanted to tell you that story on the pod.
No, that's awesome.
And I didn't want to do it in the green room.
Yeah. And he never told me to go wrestle, which was funny. I do recall you telling me that when you were my coach, that, I remember your dad got me to come out here. And I was like, I didn't even really know you that well. So I found that interesting. But then I kind of heard that from a couple other people. I was like, he never told me to go out and wrestle. I had never wrestled. I wasn't very good. I was maybe 100 pounds soaking wet and real scrawny kid, and was getting pushed around on the soccer field. And so I was just like, I got to do something that's going to change this up.
Do you think it helps you?
Oh, yeah.
What about your mind? What did it strengthen your mind?
I think, learning wrestling, like on the mat, I never got to where I was 5 steps ahead, the chess game, as they say with wrestling. I didn't have the depth to get there, or the experience of wrestling, 4 years. So to get there. But when I went back on the soccer field, it definitely helped my strategy. Defense, footwork was probably the biggest thing I think that it turned my mind onto, which as you start learning more about sports, you realize that's about 50% of any sport is the footwork, if not more.
What do you think about kids getting into the gymnastics, the jiu-jitsu, the wrestling,
awesome.
The martial arts really early in life?
I think as long, my whole thing is as long as it doesn't, stunt your growth or especially the weight cutting in wrestling. I know that's
they don't do that anymore.
And that's what I've been told.
They don't do it.
Yeah, and probably some of the old timers think that's BS, but I do think I don't have kids yet, but I would like my kids to wrestle, and I have always told my wife that I don't want them to. They wouldn't be doing any weight cutting because I just think I have anecdotal evidence of seeing kids who wrestled their whole life who definitely were stunted growth-wise.
Yeah, so all the gym. It's so funny. Like you mentioned gymnastics, and all of a sudden you're thinking like, oh my gosh, all those gymnastics are small.
Yeah.
And all of their growth. I think what's happening in Quincy. So Zeke
taken
Cernia
off,
was
isn't
on the pod recently. Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Gymnastics and martial arts and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And like self-defense, combat sports.
Taken over.
And thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
I'm a huge proponent of it, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's a really big deal.
I read Chuck Norris's book when I was in high school. What was it? My grandma gave it to me at Christmas. It was one of those white elephant gifts you pass around, and I unwrapped it. And I read every page. And it was part of the fascination I had of Chuck Norris was just his visionary as in the military to learn martial arts. Now, the martial arts Chuck Norris brought here is not anywhere near the martial arts now being practiced, right? I mean, if you put Chuck Norris-style martial arts in a UFC ring or something, not even going to be comparable. But just the story of that fad coming over to America and it starting there kind of dies down, I believe, in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And then now it's just a whole nother level of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the Gracie brothers. And
yeah, so the Jiu-Jitsu around this area. So there's a gym over there in Palmyra, Mark Kirchhoff. There's Gracie Barra. There's Midwest Jiu-Jitsu. Midwest Jiu-Jitsu is a great gym. Gracie Barra is a great gym. There's Legacy.
That's been
martial
around.
arts. Bentley, like he's a stud.
Yes, he is.
All of these gyms that are popping up. Anyone who's got kids that they just, you know what? They're not even about kids. So check this out. There's a kid I coach in our club team, and he started watching his little kid wrestle. And he went to go join a jiu-jitsu gym here in town.
Really? Because after watching his
After
son.
watching. Yeah, and he just went to Vegas. So he's a white belt.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, he went out there to
He went out there to
for a competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just started. He's only been doing jiu-jitsu for
That's awesome.
like 9 months.
Yeah.
But he's already climbed.
That
and this
ladder.
is like, and I don't know how old this gentleman is. So he's 30s or 40s. Watch, I found he's 29.
I remember at the Opens at Notre Dame, when Notre Dame would have their annual Open, seeing, because I blew my mind to see 40-year-olds out there. I think one of them was in a singlet even, wrestling in the open weight division. And I was like, I just didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, that was me getting destroyed. that was
I don't
me.
think you were there that year, but maybe you
remember Hootmacher and Kistner?
Yeah.
And all those guys from like 2 years below me? Like they were all out there. I went out there. I went to an open
I'd get
tournament.
destroyed now.
I went to an open tournament here in Quincy, and I was almost 40 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And I love telling the story. So do you know where like the bullpen is, where they put all the wrestlers together?
Yeah.
And what happens is it's a really nerve-wracking situation. Anybody who's never been in a wrestling tournament, what happens is they call your weight and class and division.
Yeah.
And then they call you to like a special table, and they'll call your actual name, and they'll call the guy who you have to wrestle. So you have to walk over with some guy that you've never met before.
Yep.
You have to stand by him for like 15, 20, 30 minutes waiting to wrestle.
And you're trying to scale them up and figure out
They
all
make
these-
you sit next to each other. So what happens is, like the kids don't talk to each other.
Right.
But when you're an adult in your open
It's a little
tournament,
bit more.
you might strike up a conversation. So I hope I haven't told this story, but if I already did tell the story in a different pod, forgive me. But this guy goes, what do you do? I go, hey, how you doing? I'm shaking his hand. And he's like squeezing the life out of my hand. He goes, what do you do?
Tactic.
I go, oh, yeah, I'm a water treater. I work here in Quincy, and we make water softeners. He's like, okay. I said, so what do you do? He goes, I compete. In my head, I'm like, I'm dead.
Screwed.
I'm dead.
Did you beat him?
No.
Okay.
I did not beat him.
I thought this was going to be a
I
victory
got
story.
the first takedown,
Yeah.
but then he threw me in a Jap whizzer.
Oh.
He got an escape very
Holy crap.
quickly. No, I mean, yeah, he got out. I think he hit like a standing switch on me.
Okay.
Took me down, let me back up, threw me in a Jap whizzer.
That's always the
Then threw me into a headlock and ripped my chin all the way
gosh.
around my head. And I was seeing stars. And Jay Zanger, do you know Jay Zanger?
Oh yeah, great guy.
He's on the side of the mat, and he's looking at all this. And I finished the match, and I could barely move. I mean, he beat me. He didn't pin me,
Nice.
but I think he beat me like 18-8, and
Yeah.
almost like most of my points were from escapes.
Yeah.
Just when him letting me
that
up.
was typically me.
So Jay goes, "You're in bad shape." I'm like, "I can't move." I was in traction for 3 or 4 days.
Oh my gosh.
I still go to the chiropractor.
Because of that.
Oh, I'm super messed up. If it's, you know how people talk about like, oh, it's going to start raining and I know because my leg hurts.
Yeah.
Okay, so
the arthritis kind of deal, or
yeah, like right now, I'm moving around. I'm pretty sure it's going to rain.
Okay. Oh, damn. We could use some.
Anyway, but wrestling's a great sport. Can we talk a little bit about wealth creation?
Sure.
All right. What is your opinion when someone says net worth?
Mm-hmm.
Do you immediately go to money, or do you go to spiritual net worth, or like, I mean, you're kind of a spiritual guy. You believe in God.
Yep.
And
Practicing Catholic. Yeah.
You're a practicing Catholic? Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry for that letter to the editor.
I enjoyed it. I actually thought you did a very nice, honest job.
Yeah, they're going to kick me out. So anyway,
don't let them do that.
No, I went to mass this past Saturday.
Yeah.
And Father Paul was there.
Yep.
And he gave me communion. He did not kick me out.
I doubt they will.
They might try. I'll go kicking and screaming. So anyway, when you think of net worth, though, so the first thing that a lot of people think, they think of money.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, if anybody ever asks you, if somebody were to come into your office and say, I want a higher spiritual net worth, a higher financial net worth, I want more money. Mm-hmm. I want all kinds of different kinds of freedom. Mm-hmm. The chances of them saying spiritual net worth is probably zero.
Yeah, very low.
But do you ever think of that just for yourself when you're trying to build somebody else's portfolio? Is there anything like in terms of like the way that you act or pick investments, or is it just straight money?
Not at all.
Do you have to set that aside?
Yeah, I mean, I think inherently, I always say the first meeting is a discovery meeting. So I inherently set the money aside because if you bring statements in or something, I'll gladly look at them. But I want the first meeting to just really be about you, your family background. I always ask couples, well, how did you meet? I mean, I think these are the important details.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I think that I also think retirement is a cultural fad back in the great-grandparents, your great-grandparents likely weren't retired at 65 living on a pension, typically. Maybe a couple were, but when Social Security was introduced, I believe, give or take a couple of years, but the full benefit 65, and the average life expectancy of a male was 67 and a female was 65. So it was only really supposed to last you 2 years of your life expectancy. So,
but paying into it your whole life.
But you were paying into it for most people their whole lives, at that point. But even that wasn't, the retirement mindset wasn't really, I'm going to retire and spend 20 or 30 years with their grandkids traveling the world. I mean, some people got to do that, but most people didn't. And then you have, the mutual funds get introduced, wealth creation becomes a giant. If you look at, stock market graphs, you can see the booms and busts, and especially like, the 80s were the heydays of the pensions and things like that. And you had interest rates were a big factor to guarantee these people guaranteed retirements, and then interest rates dropped, and that threw out of whack kind of the whole pension system. So we've gone from what's called a defined benefit, pension is a fixed amount, to more a defined contribution, what you or an employer allows you to contribute or what they might contribute. So defined benefit to now defined contribution, because usually the defined benefit couldn't be promised or wasn't sustainable for the long term.
What is the current lowest hanging fruit item if someone comes into your office and they go, what's my first step? Now let's just assume they don't have debt.
Yeah, okay.
Besides let's assume a mortgage.
Sure, okay.
Let's assume a mortgage that it's not too big of a mortgage. It's not eating up too much of a chunk. Maybe it's 20% of their income.
Yeah.
Which would be below, that's not a terrible
thing.
No,
usually 15 to 25% is a common, is kind of a standard.
What is the current, because I hear different opinions. What is the current investment vehicle that, maybe not you necessarily, but either you or somebody in your field, that the very first investment vehicle that you would recommend for someone who doesn't have debt besides their mortgage?
Mm-hmm. Typically, an employer plan is going to be what most people wanting to consider retiring someday are going to look at, because employer plans have higher contribution limits. It's not uncommon for an employer to do a match, and that's considered free money in the sense of, if they're going to match 2% or 4%, if you put it that much in, you might as well get it to get their match, because now you're at, if it's 4 and you put in 4, now you're at 8.
You're saying if somebody's employed and their employer offers them some type of IRA, typically
it's 401k, 403b, depending on how your employer is structured. Or simple. Yeah, exactly.
So especially if there's a match, because they'd be dumb not to take that, because if you put in 3% tax deferred out of your paycheck, and then your employer matches 3,
right?
From your perspective, it's almost like free money.
Yeah.
Why not take that money from your employer? What's the second? So the lowest hanging fruit is if the employer has that option for you, take it. Take it because that's the first one.
If you're trying to save for retirement, that's yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's saving for retirement, and then wealth creation is kind of a different thing than saving for retirement. But what would be the second?
Great point.
What would be the second one?
Well, probably even before what you're contributing is emergency fund, cash on hand, making sure there's some kind of cushion there.
So the Dave Ramsey one used to be.
I'm technically a Dave Ramsey Smart Vestor. I am a Dave Ramsey Smart Vestor.
Like an FPU guy.
I haven't actually presented a FPU class. I've talked to FPU people, and I've gone to an FPU class and given some feedback. But I've not done FPU, but I'm a Smart Vestor Pro. So when Ramsey fans call into his show and they want to search out an advisor who's going to give Ramsey-like advice, I'm a name that pops up there.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Which is now I like, so that's black and white as far as, because you have, I'll say, like you mentioned, okay, since you brought up, there's two common, there's a bunch of wealth management books or retail, individuals to read, but one of them was The Millionaire Next Door, and it was basically, did you read that one?
Yes.
Yes. So essentially it was the people who have the most money tend to be people who live in, thick trees, fat squirrels is, a saying, but it's this guy went to all these gated communities and tried to find all these people, all this wealth, and he found that most of them didn't have that many assets. Like literally some of their houses didn't even have furniture because they bought more of a house to impress people they didn't know that don't care about them. So, where's all the money? Well, he starts going, and then he's finding out that it's people who live pretty average lives, and it's people who make pretty average decisions on the day-to-day, and it's people who are doing fairly average things. And that's pretty true. Now, you definitely have segments. There's tiers to the economy, and so there are people who they make their wealth in capital markets, and sometimes it's because they own a company and the company's gone public, and they own shares of that company, gets bought out, and they own shares of that company that bought them out. So there's, that's the bigger wealth, and that's how a lot, there's a lot of high-end wealth, I'll say, or upper echelon wealth created that way. But for your average people in a town, it's going to be the Millionaire Next Door. On the converse side, one famous book is called, Robert Kiyosaki wrote it. I think he wrote it with Donald Trump, actually, but one of the versions at least. And that was
not Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. Thank you. Yes. And he is a little bit more. You leverage debt, and you apply these more rigid financial concepts. Mm-hmm. So the thing I say about the Ramsey approach is Ramsey is mostly behavioral finance. So is the behavior, your actions you do every day. If you go out to the bar every day after work and you're spending $100 and that's your daily surplus, then it's going to be a lot harder time growing wealth. Well, you have to change that behavior. Or if your life is stressful and you have anxiety and you go shopping online because that's your release, well, you need to tame back that behavior. And if you apply that behavioral approach, we can ignore some of the math, and that behavior will project you forward over a long period of time to a more wealth creation mindset. So the people who don't like the Dave Ramsey approach, I always say, are the math people. Well, if your interest rate's here and your mortgage payment's here, why would I pay this off? Well, I usually start off once we get to the finance side is, do you have a behavior problem, or can we look at the math side of things? Because it's not always the same blanket.
I think the Dave Ramsey approach as somebody, I have studied the Financial Peace University a little bit. I'm definitely not at your level. I don't pretend to be. But man, did you see that viral clip of him recently?
Which one?
About the $1 billion. If you're given $1 billion. Okay.
I don't think
this is what he did.
I don't watch the show every day or anything.
No. It's right. No. I don't watch Dave Ramsey at all. I mean,
I grew up listening to him though. He was the reason I got in the industry, actually.
Okay. No, great guy. No, I remember being a very young person listening to him.
Yeah.
And that is a good base to start from.
Yeah.
But I think once you have the Dave Ramsey philosophies down deep in your heart,
right.
Once you have those,
yep.
Then you got to move towards the Kiyosaki.
I don't disagree.
And then from Kiyosaki, you can move to Buffett. And then Buffett, you can move to, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
But so Dave Ramsey, I don't know how old this clip is, but it keeps on showing up in my Instagram reels. So somebody stood up in the crowd and said, Mr. Ramsey, but you always say don't take on any debt. But what would happen if somebody would give you $1 billion and at 0%, no risk at all, you can buy government bonds for 2 years, you hold on to it for 2 years, and then you get out.
Yeah.
Would you take that deal? Because you know what that winds up being? It's it's 4% of $1 billion.
Yeah, over
APR
how many years,
over just a 24-month period.
Yeah.
That amount of money?
It's the biggest trust fund you could ever imagine having.
You are uber rich.
Right.
Well, hold on a second. What is 3 or 4%? No, I take that back. You're not uber rich. Because uber rich is
if you make over $250,000 a year as household income, you're in the top 2% of income in the country. I mean, it is a Pareto distribution. Pareto distribution is a very small percentage, makes up a majority. That applies to almost every scenario, wealth to success out. I'm trying to think of another measurement you could bring up, but
yeah. Now that $250,000, I'm so far away from that. So I can I'll get there someday. Maybe when I'm 70. And then I'm going to be out in a wheelchair, and it doesn't matter, and I hand everything to my kids. But
that doesn't matter because there's more to life beyond money.
Yeah, but my goodness, why do I have to wait till I'm 70? But when I'm 70, $250,000 isn't going to be a lot of money. So it doesn't really,
that number might even be wrong now because of the inflationary environment we've been in. So I'm sure it is. So maybe 300.
How do you feel? Do you think the Roth IRA is still something, or do you think the Roth IRA has kind of? Is that just, how do I say this without being offensive? Is that just for real lower tiered?
The Roth?
Are the rich maximizing their Roths?
Well,
is everybody inside a family, like for example, let's say I was wealthy.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've got 5 people in my family.
Yeah.
Okay. And all 5 of the people in my family, I max out the Roth with my income, which I am unable to do. I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
I wish I could put up the Roth IRAs and the 529s.
Yeah.
And then also there's all of these tricks where you can pay your kids a certain amount of
custodial IRA.
All that stuff.
Yep. Custodial Roth.
I'm not in a position to do that right now. Is that what the rich are doing? Are they maximizing?
Yeah, I mean, for a young person, the Roth IRA is going to be one of their highest wealth creation tools because once you start compounding, you've already paid your taxes in a Roth. Your taxes have been paid, so the government doesn't tell you at 72 and a half you got to start taking money out or anything like that. So those kind of rules that you don't have this tax burden down the road allows your money to compound even further. Especially, I mean, there's occasionally people don't even plan on touching their Roth, and so if that's where they if their kids are the inheritors of their Roth, the kids have just inherited a pretty nice tax-free.
Well, it's $8,000 a year ish, something like
7,
that. I think that's the 7.
Yeah.
So okay, so do the wealthy, the ones who have already achieved wealth, do they skip over this because they're I don't care about $7,000?
So this gets into how you define wealth because, there's income limits to an IRA. Okay. So, if you're a doctor making $1 million a year, you can't, the Roth IRA is null and void. And now there are ways you can convert traditional IRAs into a Roth conversion. So and it means you're paying your taxes, now, but So, but if you're talking asset wise and compounding on assets, the Roth's going to be better. But there's the reality that if your income is how you're defining wealth, I'm wealthy if I make over $300,000 a year. Well, you might have you've just pigeonholed yourself into not being able to contribute to a Roth without doing some other backdoor Roth IRA. So I know that sounds very vague. This is where wealth management gets very personal, because most people aren't, statistically, most people aren't beyond the Roth IRA contribution limit. Married, filing jointly, 230,000, I believe.
Is that what it is?
190 to starting at 190. And it's a phase out, starting around 190. So then most families are not in that scenario. So this is where, for the average, and you're kind of talking about the uber wealthy, I think, but for the average person, the Roth is a great route to go.
Okay.
That was my first investment, was a Roth IRA. But the other factor into like any kind of wealth management discussion is, hey, you're tying up your money for your future there. So make sure your needs now are met. Make sure you have at least an emergency fund. A good practice is 3 to 6 months of expenses if you ask most people. So, you don't have that? Well, maybe consider trying to get there and then look at a Roth. And that's very generic advice, but
yeah,
but the 401k is going to have higher contribution limits, right? So a Roth, you're, $7,000 a year. If you have a 401k, you can do originally it was really just traditional. So you pay tax when you withdrew, and it's an ordinary income tax when you withdraw that. Now, businesses are adding the Roth component to the 401k, which is making that a huge advantage.
I'm looking at my calendar. It says today is October 9th. So this pod will probably post, it's whenever the publisher, Mr. Bob, whenever he posts it, it'll be Thursday or Friday. He always posts it.
Depends on how much
Thursday
editing I make him do.
Yeah, it depends on, he's busy. So if it posts on Friday, if everyone's listening to this Friday, it means that Bob was super, super busy on Thursday.
And Aiden didn't do a good job on the podcast.
And Aiden screwed up, and we had to edit the whole thing and like scrap it and start over and bring
I'm
somebody
very
else
boring, you guess. Yeah.
No, you're not. So, but I'm looking at the calendar here, and the election's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And I am struggling to find somebody. I'm not asking you to be on another pod before the election, but
Okay.
I've got 2 or 3 people coming up. I've got Tony Cameron coming up on the 23rd. I've got a special guest coming up on the 16th, but on the 30th, I think, on October 30th, that's going to be the week before the election, and I've got 2 or 3 people kind of in the pipeline.
Okay.
And all 3 of those people, all 3 of those guys are. There's 1 female and 2 men.
Okay.
And all 3 of them want to come on the pod, but they're afraid of what they're going to say because all 3 of them are super
It's
pissed.
election time.
They're they're super mad and scared and fearful and whatnot. And all of them are going to be, whichever one I choose, we're probably going to have to do.
I'll say a prayer for them. Yeah.
They're going to be okay. They're going to make it. But are you at all worried? Are you the typical American that is kind of apprehensive about the results of the election? And do you believe the polls?
Do I believe? I believe, there's lies, damn lies in statistics. And so would I say most pollsters are trying to get a great layout of the political landscape? I would like to think so. I think, I also think the demographic shift has been so big.
What do you mean?
I don't think the parties are the same parties. And I think there's a lot, like Trump seems to be getting a lot more of the union vote, which would have been a hardcore Democrat stronghold back in the day. So, you might have a union endorse the Democrats, but then the internal polling of the unions showed the members maybe aren't going that direction. And that actually seems to have come out if what I was reading was accurate. My point is I think it's probably harder to poll because of the political environment we're in. People are afraid to say what they think. I don't know if you've heard of Trafalgar Group, but they're a pollster. I found that interesting when I researched them. They, I think, were one of 2 pollsters that predicted the 2016 win by Donald Trump. Okay. And one of the reasons why was their head pollster, without rambling on, was Robert Cahaley, I believe his name, was decided instead of asking who are you voting for, he would say, who do you think your neighbor's voting for? And he used that as like a subconscious proxy because he thought most people would say, well, I think my neighbor's voting for Hillary Clinton. And that, in his mind, for whatever reason, his model baked in that was their subconscious wishing their neighbor would say that. Because
Really?
Yeah. And because he thought people were afraid to say, I'm voting for Donald Trump. So he added that as a key question, and that was one thing that gave him an edge. So I think that the variables shift probably every 4 years. I don't know. I'm sure there's some political scientist, Dr. Coffey at QU or something, who could tell you how these have changed better than I can. But
Yeah, Dr. Coffey, he's always good to have on.
yes, he is. He comes to Optimist Club and talks to us about once a year.
Yeah, his answers are always nuanced, measured, accurate, and kind of unemotional.
Yes,
very interesting, but unemotional, which I really appreciate.
Fact-based, non-emotional information.
Do you think that Eisenhower put out this this address when he was leaving office, and he warned about the military-industrial complex. And he put out this big warning that like 2 years later, there's this theory that, conspiracy theories.
Anyone listening if I say no, anyone listening is going to say you're a total liar because I love conspiracy theories.
Oh, you love them?
I do, yeah.
Well,
I mean, not everyone.
Do you like the ones that are true, or do you like the ones that are not true?
Only the ones that I think are true, because my bias is always correct. And that's sarcasm.
Yeah. So I want to make sure people walk in your office and
know that I love
you for your services. So I'm not going to ask you which is the don't answer this.
Okay,
but it's a funny question because it's like, what conspiracy theory has not been proven true, but you think it is true? And you can answer that or not answer that, but
yeah, I mean, I think the JFK situation is really interesting, and I think Robert Kennedy, RFK Jr. I don't want to trigger anyone just by mentioning his name, but I think his insight is interesting. His uncle was murdered and his father was murdered, and he's talked pretty openly on the campaign trail about different aspects of that. And I remember in high school. But first of all, the theories have gone like everywhere. Like in high school, I remember one of my teachers, a German teacher at Notre Dame, telling me about Frank Sinatra calling JFK to warn him not to go to Texas, and that the mob was involved in, and if my memory is serving, but that's what I recall him saying. And so I remember thinking it was the mob growing up, had something to do with it. But Robert F. Kennedy's input has been kind of interesting, and one of the things he said lately was that when Trump wanted to release all the JFK files, there was a certain person in his administration who held him back. And he said this, I think, on Jordan Peterson's podcast. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said this, so I'm just repeating this.
Yeah.
That I believe it's Mike Pompeo said the American people are not ready to read all those files of what actually occurred. And he said you can't release all, according to him, you can't release all the files, Mr. President, because we're not ready to see those.
And Trump,
he did not.
It's the story like Trump's like looking at this is not, because at the time, so I don't like using the term deep state anymore.
Okay.
Because it has such
Has it been
negative,
hijacked?
Yeah, it's been hijacked. Like, it's kind of like if somebody calls me an ism name, I'm like, that has no power over me anymore. You guys killed that word. If they call me, or anybody, which by the way, people are not calling me these names, but probably behind my back they are. Like anything that rhymes with misogynistic.
Yeah.
Which I don't think I'm like that. No, like all the isms.
Yeah. Dennis Prager coined the 7 isms.
The 7 isms? Yeah, Prager.
Yeah.
That guy, man. Dennis Prager. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, the like all of those isms. I don't feel like I am any of those isms. And if I was, I would just kind of like admit it and just
accept it
and then defend it.
Badge of honor. Yeah.
I defend it.
Yeah.
But I am, do you feel like, I was about to say, I feel like I'm being radicalized. So in a non-violent way.
Yeah.
I'm saying before I didn't really.
Did you even pay attention to politics?
I started paying attention to politics right after college.
Okay.
Like right right before, I would say either right before 9/11 or right after 9/11.
Okay.
Something, I don't know why. I was really mesmerized. Like the 9/11 thing was wild for me because I was living downtown Chicago and I was teaching a low-level computer class to the elderly.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
It was crazy. I was living on.
You learned a lot about. You've probably earned a lot of skills doing that. Communication and
unbelievable.
All those.
Yeah, for like a year or two, I was teaching levels 1, 2, and 3 Excel, Microsoft Word, and PowerPoint to senior citizens.
That's crazy.
Because senior citizens were like getting these computers.
Precipice, the cusp of all this.
Yeah, and like the older the not even the boomers. What's the generation before the boomers? The silent
the
greatest generation?
Yeah,
or the
silent generation, and then the greatest generation, I believe.
Yeah. So anyway, essentially at my grandparents' age,
Mm-hmm.
I was teaching them all of these things, and then like we see, 9/11. I'm across the street. Well, I'm 3 or 4 blocks away from the Sears Tower.
Okay.
I'm not going to call it the Willis Tower, so don't try to strong arm me. I'm right down the street.
You lived in Chicago. You have a right to call
I have
it
a right to.
whatever. Yeah.
I can call it the Sears Tower. So that whole thing kind of, I mean, it was a mass exodus out of the city.
Sure.
And then from then on, I was paying attention to all of this stuff. I'm living by myself downtown Chicago.
Yeah.
Living on LaSalle, working on LaSalle.
Sure.
Like downtown.
Probably thinking, what if this happened here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so I was about 20, I was about 23, 24 years old when I started really paying attention to politics and then listening to all the different talking heads and then picking up newspapers and picking up books.
Yeah.
And the internet was definitely alive at that time, but I'd say that's about when I started getting into it. But you gave me a quote. I need to find this real quick.
Was it the G.K. Chesterton quote?
Can you say it off the top of your head?
I only enjoy talking religion and politics because that's all there is to talk about.
Gosh, and who is that? G.K. Chesterton?
Yeah.
I never discuss anything else except politics and religion. There's nothing else to discuss. And then you also wrote in part of your bio that you have this general feel that you think politics is downstream from culture. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that so I think Western civilization, religion defined the culture.
Religion did.
Yes, in my opinion. And the spread of Christianity in Western, I'm talking Western civ here. And so the world we live in today and the beautiful architecture and all these as a result of the spread of Christianity. But we've become a more secularized world. And so the culture, like it used to be, if you go to like if you go to art exhibits and art museums in Chicago, Kansas City, New York, and you realize all art was basically religious art, or it was either religious art or the counter to religious art because they had to make that bold, kind of comparison. But that created like the world we live in, and a lot of our traditions and value. I mean, Christmas. Our whole calendar is BC, AD. I mean, this is embedded deep in our culture, but we've become a secularized world. And so as we've gotten more secular, we have minority cultures, and not minority, like I'm not talking ethnocentric groups. I'm just talking, like underground cultures are more on the rise. The nuns, like the people who say they have no faith at all or whatever, is one of the largest segments of the economy of the population. So that's increased, and so you have all these things with culture, and I think it's led to a fascination of I'll say American pop culture kind of deal. So culture, however you want to define that, but as how the general consensus of America is, it's not near as religious as it used to be, and so that plays the bigger role in society, and politics is just an offspring of that.
Okay, yeah. Have you heard?
In my opinion.
Yeah. I think that's spot on.
And I think politics has become a religion because, in my opinion, if you don't believe in something, then you'll believe in anything. And I mean, I think every movement at its heart is some kind of religion. So if you're a hardcore Republican, doesn't mean you're not religious, but I think that's a form of religion for a lot of people, or a hardcore Democrat, or if you're anti-woke, or if you're very woke, I think we're all religious. Just show me where you spend your time, and I'll show you what you worship, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Have you heard the term material secularism?
Yes.
So the idea that as people are getting away from, it starts when you're in a city and there's so much light pollution that you cannot see the stars anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So people are not looking up. There's something about looking up. There's something about the third eye.
It's inherent. Yeah.
I mean, looking up, like doing this,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Awe-inspiring,
looking up at the stars.
yeah.
I mean, that pineal gland right there in the middle,
Yeah.
in the frontal cortex.
Yep.
And then you can't see the stars anymore.
Right.
And all of a sudden you see all the people and you see the bums lying on the streets.
Yeah.
And you see
the trash everywhere.
Yeah. You just
Concrete.
the concrete jungle. And then there's just material. There's less birds in those big cities.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to people before about this, about like what makes somebody in the city feel a certain way or somebody in the country. You talked about demographics earlier.
Talk about the divide.
There's a divide.
Oh, huge.
And it's getting probably, and I'm not saying this in like a negative way.
Right. It just is.
I'm not trying to be depressing. I'm just saying like this is kind of what's happening.
Yeah.
I do think society is moving towards more of a secular, materialistic.
I think it's been on that trend, and I likely gets worse before it gets better, or it likely goes down that path before it changes back to the other.
I think it's been going on for a little over 100 years.
Yeah, and then I think the big like atheist movement was in the 90s, I believe. Like Christopher Hitchens, like the Sam Harrises, like became very popular in that time. I can't remember some really famous actors.
Christopher Hitchens
who was
and
brilliant
Sam Harris,
guy. Yeah, I mean
both
these brilliant people. I mean they're way smarter than I am.
Oh,
but they led. I mean that was its own culture. And I remember a story from Dennis Prager when he debated Christopher Hitchens, and he raised his hand and said, "If you're a religious person, raise your hand if you've ever doubted your faith." And the whole room hand went up. And he goes, "Now, if you're an atheist, raise your hand if you've ever doubted your atheism." And almost no hands went up. So I think his point was more, you're in your own religion of thought. So just. I mean, religion's a pattern of beliefs and practice. Religion is a series of practices.
I've often thought that being agnostic is a really respectable position. Agnostic meaning
you don't know.
You just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You see the Muslims and you're like, I don't know, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You see the Jews, you're like, okay, yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You see the Christians, the Catholics, you say, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
You see the Hindus.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you study the Native Americans.
Yeah.
Okay. Greek mythology.
Right.
Then you see this evolution. So what about, do you think, so the idea of being agnostic is when you look at the whole encompassing part of, see what I did there?
Yeah.
The whole encompassing part of like piece of the world that you are framed into from your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And you think to yourself, you know what? I hear about faith. I want to have faith. Mm-hmm. I kind of am jealous of people that have either the blind faith or not even the blind faith, where they just know like exactly who they are. They say they're beings of light and we're in these squishy bodies and we're on these vessels, and you take all the science and you say, what's more real? Genesis or the Big Bang?
Right. Well, literary truth or scientific truth.
Yeah. And I think agnosticism is a very respectable position.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am going to tell you right now that I do not know what's going on right now.
Right.
I do not know. But I'm not agnostic because I'm a deist. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. I don't know how that deity operates.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay? And we could talk, if you think you know, then tell me right now because that's a $1 million answer. But I don't think, even though I think agnosticism is a respectable position, I do not think atheism is a respectable position.
Yeah, I think agnosticism makes more sense to me versus just saying I just refuse to believe in anything. Again, I think if I observed a behavior or if you observed your own behavior, you could probably find out you do believe in something.
No, but what I'm saying is,
but like, agnosticism to say, well, the world's too unknown. No one could ever know. There's too many other religions out there for me.
I think that's agnosticism.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like,
right.
Atheism is the hard line. I'd believe in nothing. Well, it's like, well, you probably are doing something every day of your life that's some kind of practice. So you probably do, you just don't realize
The atheist is saying there's no God.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But then what do you believe? Where do you derive values from? Where does morality come from? All these.
Yeah, they've got all of these. The atheists have all of these baked in ideas like the morality comes from within. I know there's something in my heart that I know that murder is wrong. Okay. Okay. You know this because you've been taught that your whole entire life.
And I have people
if you were taught that murder was right, if there's a culture in the Amazon that says murder, this is how you do it.
Cannibalism. I mean, if you eat somebody because you're killing them, so there were those cultures.
You can fry anything and make it taste good.
That's what I've been told.
Even people.
Do you think if you eat people, like what is that called? Where when you eat, there's that theory when you eat human meat, you become addicted to it, and I don't know that. I think it might be hogwash, but anyway, I think it's a kind of a funny trope about.
Okay, Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, but that was like a thing that I don't know if that has any bearing to truth whatsoever, but.
Oh man!
But I wanted to say something about all the religions. I heard a Jewish thinker talk about this once with, Judaism he's obviously not Christian, but they asked him, if you were dropped in the world, how do you know you'd be the same person you are if you grew up in, Afghanistan and 1800s, you would be subject to that culture, right?
Yeah.
I thought his answer was very interesting. Christianity, Islam, we are from the Israelites. Israel means we who wrestle with God. That's the stem of Islam means we who submit to God. And he said, I could never be part of a faith that didn't allow me to question it and endure the components that a lot of agnostics ask and have to face. I could never be part of a religion. I'd have to be able to question things and have that struggle.
I would argue that Christianity allows for that.
Allow for
that total doubt of you're sitting there. You're like,
right. I don't know. There are times you don't know.
Yeah, and it's like, please, the creator,
the
programmer of the simulation,
right? Yeah,
whoever it is,
right?
Will you please help me? It's kind of like
whoever's doing the zeros and ones.
Whoever is in there behind the scenes, pulling the strings of the Matrix. Can you hear me? I'm pinging to you.
I would like $1 million. I'd like a faster path to wealth creation, or I'd like the nicer car.
Do you think? So people talk about calling out. They say
the self-affirmations.
So The Secret. You ever heard about the book called The Secret?
I knew it was a movie. I think.
Yeah, it's a movie.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's based on a book.
Okay.
It's a real teeny tiny book about this big, and. You know how you mentioned The Millionaire Next Door?
Yeah.
You read chapter after chapter after chapter. Do you know what they teach? Frugality.
In The Secret?
No, in The Millionaire
Next
Door.
Right.
In The Millionaire Next Door, chapter after chapter is frugality.
Basic, yeah.
If you read chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can eventually stop because you don't have to get chapter 13. In The Secret, it's kind of the same thing where you learn that whatever you want, you have to relentlessly speak into existence. You have to wake up every single morning.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you get up and you say, I want to kick ass. Okay, You know how you kick ass? You know how you kick ass?
You tell yourself you're going to.
You tell yourself you're going to kick ass. You wake up and you do it, and you don't let anybody stop you.
That's motivational speaking is that basically.
So meditation, when you kind of go to zero, like in calculus, when you're looking at limits, you're trying to get to zero. When you're trying to meditate, you're trying to go to zero. When you are trying to empty your mind and be at peace.
Yeah.
Peace?
Mm-hmm.
Peace is not an adrenaline, testosterone-filled, booze-filled, coke-filled thing. Peace is close
serenity.
It's down close to zero.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're meditating, when you're asking the universe, to the atheist, we got to tell the atheist, we call that prayer.
Mm-hmm.
We call that prayer. So because you're asking, because that's what I think. You can say meditation, the Hindus will say meditation.
Right.
The Muslims have, I think they call it prayer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But prayer means, it doesn't mean that you're some psycho looking for the invisible God in the sky.
Right.
What you're doing is you're grounding in,
and
reaching out and shooting out the light,
the vibes,
right. Which probably. I'm gonna go ahead and be a psycho and say I think light comes out of my fingers. You can't see it.
Transubstantiation.
Ooh, yeah. But boy, transubstantiation.
Catholic theology 101.
Boy, I got into some trouble for that. You know, my original Facebook post where I put in the transubstantiation.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say this, Bob. Bob, if you don't like this, you can edit it. But I wrote this thing on Facebook, and then both David, Adam, and Bob were like, "So here's the deal.
Take it out.
You got to take all that out." That's just, which, by the way, like, I'm not going to say like what they believe.
Yeah.
That's for them to say.
Right.
But we pulled that out.
Okay.
Because it was some my wacko quasi pseudo quantum mechanical theory.
Okay.
On transubstantiation.
Yeah.
Okay, so to close up the pod.
Yeah.
The last 2 or 3 minutes of
We're
this
there
pod,
already. Oh my gosh.
We're done.
Wow.
That's it. Last two or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Transubstantiation.
Mm-hmm.
How believable is that to the atheist?
It's probably a good reason to be agnostic.
It's a good reason to be agnostic.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it really is. It takes some kind of like very strange
Takes
faith.
a leap of faith.
Can I tell you how I think it works?
Sure.
So
since they wouldn't let you publish it, now's your.
They would let me. They gave me some very good advice because they're like, just pull it out.
But I'm all in on this.
It's superfluous
Go
to
ahead.
the main point.
Yes.
So there is this one of the greatest discoveries in all of the 20th century was something that's not believable.
The Shroud of Turin.
The Shroud of Turin is one of them.
Okay, go ahead.
I like that. No, it's this idea. It's post-Einsteinian. It is kind of it's quantum mechanics.
Okay.
Here's the thing. And I hope this isn't boring for anybody, but transubstantiation means in the Catholic Church there is a belief that the actual bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to explain how it's possible. Okay? So there are miracles that happen every single day, every minute of the day. Mm-hmm. It's miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle. Okay? And we don't even have the ability to record all of the miracles.
This green ball in this entire universe is quite miraculous.
I mean,
really.
we're moving 26,000 miles.
Yeah.
On a
pretty
rock.
miraculous.
I mean, the people down below us, down there in China, they're upside down.
Right.
That's not even believable.
And our feet are on the ground.
And their feet are on the ground. It's not believable.
Yeah.
None of this is believable.
Yeah, pretty abstract.
We're in the simulation.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in the matrix.
Right.
So transubstantiation, when a person understands cosmology and the speed of light and what time is and what time isn't, how time is probably an illusion, it's a construct. Mm-hmm. It's possibly, it's very possible the fourth dimension. Gravity could be the fifth dimension. Mm-hmm. We don't know what the hell's going on. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you finally figure out that we have no idea what's going on, and
Right.
don't be so doubting of everything except the power of the deity of what can happen.
Right.
Transubstantiation makes some sense, and here's how I think it can happen.
Go ahead.
There's something called superposition.
Okay.
Superposition is pretty much been proven that the same electron can exist over here and over here at the same time. The same electron.
Okay.
Okay. That also means that if I have an electron over here hovering in space, 100 million light years that way towards Andromeda, past Andromeda, because Andromeda's not that far away. It's only like 12 million light years away or something.
I'll take your word for it.
I
believe you. Yeah.
Actually, it's closer than that.
Is it?
The same electron can exist in two spaces at the same time.
Yeah. Is this what do they call it? What do they call it? Dual. Anyway. Mirrored like realities or. Whatever.
Okay, so the idea is this: you've got we only have a minute or two left. The idea is that since time probably doesn't exist,
Right.
it probably doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. Whatever we're doing right now, the crucifixion and the resurrection, mm-hmm. Those are two other things that you have to believe too.
Right.
Which I absolutely 100% allow for the possibility of that. Mm-hmm. And what guides me through that is my faith. Mm-hmm. If I can't try to explain it scientifically,
right.
I think that God works inside his own laws at all times. I don't even believe in supernatural.
Really?
No, I don't. I believe that everything that is supernatural is natural.
Yeah, interesting.
I just think that say, over the natural. It's like, no, it's all natural.
Yeah.
Like it's one miracle after another.
Yeah.
Because I think God's more powerful than what everybody else gives him credit for.
Right.
That's my stance on it.
Why did he rest on his seventh day of creation if he's all powerful? That philosophical question.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Why did he rest?
But the idea of if there is no time, then what we're celebrating right now, infinity is when everything's happening all at once, all the time.
So my wife's birthday is coming up. I don't have to get her anything because time doesn't matter is what you're saying.
You can try that one.
I won't. I'm not that dumb.
So the idea is the fact that the greatest discovery of the 20th century was the fact that when you don't observe something, it is not the same as when you observe it.
When you don't, okay.
So when you observe something,
Yeah.
you have collapsed the function, specifically the wave function.
So when they discovered the atom, they collapsed the wave function.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And inside the atom there's nucleus and protons. Inside the protons are neutrons. Inside the neutrons are
Ant-Man.
I'm sorry, inside the proton you've got quarks. Ant-Man. So inside the quarks. And then inside the quarks are tiny filament vibrating strings. That's where you get string theory.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
So the idea of the fact that it probably is bread
Yeah.
and wine when you look at it under a microscope, because that's the test. And that's ye who have little faith that directly observes it and doesn't believe what it is.
That
when you
change.
look at it, collapses the wave function, turns back into bread and wine. But when you are there and there's no observer of like electron microscopes and
Yeah.
whatnot to check what the substance is,
Right.
through faith, the miracle is for that time being, everything is observable in that state, and then you can do that through faith and through the miracle. But if you try to look at it, it'll turn right back to bread and wine because you have collapsed the wave function because you have become the
You've
observer.
observed it. I did not know I was in the presence of a genius, Frankie.
No,
but that is very interesting.
Anyway, that is my non-Catholic explanation of it. But
It might be Catholic. I don't know. You'd have
it
to.
should be. I'm
Yeah.
sure the Jesuits are working on it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Anyway, what else you got? Where's your office?
12th and Hampshire. So southeast corner, 12th and Hampshire. Yeah. And
What are your hours of
I'm
operation?
active in the community. You should probably see me around. Our office is 8:30 to 4:30, and usually some weekends or before or after, depending on when people need to meet. So.
Do you want to ever come on again and talk about marriage and spreading good cheer and
Sure.
goodwill in the community because you're very active in the community?
Sure.
And you're on a bunch of boards. I mean,
That'd be
you're
a
all
pleasure.
over,
Yeah.
You're all
Yeah.
over the place.
I'm a little all over the place.
You
Yeah.
do a lot of work.
Yes, sprinkle a lot of seeds and then hope something cultivates. So
Well, a lot of stuff's cultivating for you.
appreciate it.
Aiden McDonnell.
Frankie.